There's now a second. Today's class is all about perspective. I think that maybe Rachel didn't intend it to be, but as I read this section, that's what stood out to me. My notes are always changing, so if you have the advance organizer from during the week, you really want a hard copy because it's a little bit different. And it was amended during the sermon at 9 o'clock. So those of you who were at 9 o'clock know that one of the things that Remington mentioned in the sermon was the perspective of Jesus. And given a rich man and a poor man, a rich, wealthy, prominent person who everyone knew, Jesus chose to know the poor man. And so that couldn't have, and there's a whole lot more in the sermon than that, but that one little snippet really fits in with our class today. Because in reading this section, as you know, we have 4 different leaders and each of us has 2 sections to present. And I was happy to present, as I said in our planning meeting, whatever section fell on today, because I knew I was going to be here because I was vestry person and lead usher at 11:15. So I got the section that deals in the introduction to it with women, slavery, lack of privilege, people of color, the Jewish experience, pregnancy, and miscarriage. So here I am, an older white Christian male with no experience in any of those things firsthand. And so many of you do have some experience and have some stories about that. And so where we're going is our perspective changes based on our life experience. And part of our life experience is the stories that we hear. And you'll hear some today, which is what makes this class so fun. So Rachel starts out, and this is just an example, but of one of those. She starts out with the story of the well. And the story, that's the story of Hagar, who was the slave of Sarah. She's pregnant with Ishmael. And she flees captivity. She runs away. In her flight, she has an encounter with God, who she names the God who sees, because God saw her plight and understood her plight. And after that, she returned to Sarah. She returned to her captivity. And possibly that was to protect her pregnancy, because she was told that Ishmael would be the father of a people. And she was told to name him that. So again, names are important. She was a small person who named God, and he named her son. So the story is strong and poignant, and it also, we need to keep in mind, is a story told from words that sound like they're coming from Hagar, but they're coming from Rachel Held Evans, who is very different than Hagar and has a different perspective. White woman of privilege telling the story of a slave of color. And so it's just interesting how the story may be changed based on the perspective. And Rachel herself recognizes this, and the story is probably richer for her perspective, because she says on page 40, it's especially important for those of us who come to the Bible from positions of relative social, economic, and racial privilege to read stories alongside people from marginalized communities, past and present, who are often more practiced at tracing that crimson thread of justice through its pages. So Rachel's perspective also is colored by the fact that she was raised to believe that the Bible is inerrant and infallible and literally true. And this book is about how her point of view changed over her short lifetime. So in telling deliverance stories, which is what this section's about, really, according to Rachel, she talks about or writes about Noah and the flood, Moses leading the Hebrews out of bondage, Jesus tempted by Satan in the wilderness. So both collective and individual deliverance stories. So we kind of think that maybe where we're headed is those collective stories when we're all in this together, when a people is delivered, when a congregation is delivered. But she also focuses on our individual stories. One of the stories she tells is about Mary, who, of course, her deliverance story was the incarnation, which is a pretty darn important individual deliverance story, right? So all deliverance stories have a wilderness component, whether they're individual or collective. And Rachel highlights that in this section, that our experience with wilderness and deliverance go hand in hand. If there's no wilderness, there maybe can't be any deliverance. And everybody's wilderness is different. So Rachel says on 48, be warned, in scripture and in life, the road to deliverance nearly always takes a detour. Rarely do the people of God reach any kind of promised land without a journey or two through the wilderness. She then says, in the end, and again, kind of mirroring the sermon, which if you're going to 11:15, you get to hear it. And if you went to 9, you might want to hear it again. In the end, it all comes back to love. This is the point of every liberation, every wandering through the desert. To love is to honor God and keep God's commandments. Love is the law that liberates the slave and the slaveholder. Love is the ultimate deliverance story, for only love can sustain the sojourner out of Egypt, through the desert, up the mountain, and into the promised land. Then she also takes a hard look at scripture and says, the truth is, you can bend scripture to say just about anything you want it to say. We are all selected. We all have a point of view. If we go to the text looking for something, we have a tendency to find it. So, are we reading with the prejudice of love, with the point of view of Jesus? Or are we reading with the prejudice of judgment and power, self-interest and greed? Are we seeking to enslave or to liberate, to burden or to set free? That was on page 58. And my addition is the if. Rachel said, we all go to the text looking for something. We all have a tendency to find it. In my experience, as you know from my introduction, I haven't looked at the text very much. I'm relatively new to scripture. And so in my experience, I don't necessarily go, or people don't necessarily go looking for something. When I enrolled in a Bible study, I was looking for a Bible study. And so I found what was presented. I wasn't looking for a justification. I was looking to explore the Bible. So I don't think we necessarily go looking for something, although sometimes we do. And again, the caution is, if you're looking for it, you're going to find it. But it might not necessarily point you in the right direction. And I think that comes again from Rachel's early experience when, you know, she was told that she couldn't be important in the Christian faith because she was a woman. She couldn't be a preacher. She couldn't be many things in the church she grew up in because she was a woman. So coming back to our point of view, everyone is different. Everyone has a different point of view, and everyone has a slightly different faith. And so as we develop our faith, and as our stories develop through our living and our listening to the stories of others, I think our point of view matures. And the stories take on new meaning. So Bible stories don't have to mean just one thing. They can mean multiple things to multiple people. And all of our lives can be richer as we share our stories with each other. So the discussion questions should be on the back of your handout. If each table would appoint a discussion leader, if you don't feel like you have enough people at your table to have a robust discussion, feel free to join another table. And we have the rest of our time to maybe get to all these questions. Don't feel rushed. If you don't get to every question, you can take them home. We also usually quit about 11, but if you're still talking and you don't need to be at 11:15, feel free to keep talking.
I just want to make one comment as you have discussions in your group, and I think this chapter in particular struck me as opportunities to share our own stories. So remember that there may be things shared in the group that maybe doesn't need to be told to the world or shared with the world. So let's maintain some level of confidentiality in our groups if there are those kinds of stories shared.
Thank you, Jen.